Nice. It's not a sought-after skill. It's just one that happened.
I need to claim that as a skill.
Yeah.
Being late for things, that's what my skill is.
Yeah, there's some of those kinds of.
Welcome, those who are in person, but also those who are streaming. This is a sound check for those who are streaming because I have a very good idea that the in-person people can hear plenty good. So that means please do not be shy. In the chat of YouTube, I need you to say, hey, this sounds good, or gee whiz, I could use some more, or however you'd like to phrase that. So we're doing a test, we're gonna double check some things, and then I can't wait, it's gonna be so much fun. So this is a sound check. Sometimes it's delayed a little bit, and I will watch for your answers. Ooh. You don't have to be that quiet, everybody. See, the in-person people are now like nervous. No, this is fun. This is great. It's okay.
There you go. Sound check that.
Weird.
Somebody just get it from the door, I'm pretty sure.
Sound has an echo. Okay.
Push towards the front so there's more doors near the back.
All right, someone mentioned that the sound may have a little bit of an echo. I tried to turn it down a little bit, see if that would help. So I'm hoping for your guidance and your comments again. So come forth and share. I mean, there might be a slight one just because of, but if it's that crazy, or if other people can let me know, that's double check.
You'll have to make the announcement about cell phones.
No, anyway.
They always do that. They always do that at storytelling.
I have mine out because some people have been texting me about it. It was a sound check.
Oh, okay. You were sound checking your phone?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Making sure the sound was off. Yeah.
Could you read me the comments just in case?
I couldn't handle that one with her lips.
All right, how are we doing now? Are we doing better with the sound? Do you feel like it's loud enough? It's not just about if it's echoey or not, but is it a good volume for you? So please share in the comments of YouTube gloriousness. Whoa, please send forth. And I know there's a delay, so maybe I have to do this for this long. But we want you to have a good time, and it helps to be able to hear the stories and not just see her do stuff up here. So, how is it?
No.
Any comments yet? No one's.
What?
People, we need your help. Let me know.
There's no video.
The what? Hold on.
Benny, put the bells.
No, that is the video.
Yeah, but we're not showing.
I weren't showing.
Yeah, that's what I
Well,
said.
that's a problem.
Sounds
See, the people who are live streaming, they're missing all this fun.
So then after he passed away, that was the first thing we did is everything people don't know. And then this door has 2 doorknobs.
Okay, Laurie, can I have you just do a test to show up?
The lowest one that's not a door knob.
Okay.
So I have to.
Okay, all right, so we have that. Now let's check on this. But it's not doing its thing, okay.
As you were, you don't need to be quiet. She just has her special magic she has to do.
Frankly, you should be congratulating me on being quiet. I'm proud of you.
We see how this is.
I didn't notice it. I'm not saying nothing.
The chuckle said it all. So like, obviously that man knows her. Okay.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna talk for the next hour, and people who know me, that's not gonna surprise them.
No.
I'm just curious, how many of you are familiar with storytelling in this kind of a thing? Okay, oh, we got some fresh blood. I've got fresh meat.
Meat.
Oh, it's meat. Oh, it's meat, yes.
Vegetables.
Those are for afterwards.
Yeah, we've got some of those too. No, because when I tell people that I'm going to storytell, I say, oh, to children. I say, oh no, I get to tell to adults tonight. So I can can tell some real stories. I tell the children too, but you know, it's fun to be able to tell.
Yeah,
the bigger
and she used to be
people.
an
Okay,
elementary
I need you to
school teacher.
test there again, please.
Talking, standing, doing a cartwheel, I can't do cartwheels.
Nuts.
So, what is it you need?
The sounds, if you did a cartwheel, would be funny.
The sound would be the sirens coming and picking up my broken body off the floor. That's what
There's really not room in here for cartwheels anyway. We're not zoned for cartwheels.
So, is that what you needed? Is me being snarky? Because that's what you.
Oh yeah, please be more snarky.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So about storytelling.
Yeah.
This was an art form that was really popular before radio, right?
Mhm.
Is that kind of, am I correct in that history?
Storytelling is from the
as far as, like,
ages.
performing?
As far as performing, see, storytelling has been around since
Yeah.
the cave, whoever, you know, it's been
Okay.
around.
I feel super good now.
But, we got all the TV and all the.
There's someone in the audience who asked the question about how long has storytelling been around, and I like to say, really, from the very first human beings, we've had storytelling. So as long as that is to you, then that is the length of time it is. My mom says that I was a storyteller as soon as I opened my mouth, and did yours say that? Yours?
Pretty much.
Pretty much, which is a compliment, I'm sure. Now, this is actually not my home, so I'm going to actually turn the time over to someone who will welcome you to this space, whether you're in person or streaming, and then I'll say some things. Does that work?
Okay.
All right, let's have it.
Okay. Hello and welcome to the Manning household. I am the host. I've been the mover of furniture and the answering in calm ways to stressed out questions for the last 48 hours. This has been my job. We're here to witness some terrifying stories. And you might think, ooh, where might you get such terrifying stories? Are we having some like unearthly beast or something from the nether realm? And it is in fact a mother-in-law brought here for your witnessing enjoyment this evening. So I hope you enjoy the Storytelling Guild, who has loaned us all of the apparatus, and my mother-in-law, who will send you the stories.
Right, I am not the storyteller. I am representing Story Crossroads. So this is our 95th house concert. 95, that is amazing. And I think it deserves some applause. And what's amazing is that the continuous funding that we get, which is so helpful, and we've gotten it from the National Endowment for the Arts, from the National Endowment for the Humanities, but I pause there because if you haven't heard, there's been some really big federal funding chops, and in fact, the National Endowment for the Humanities has no funding right now, and they're going off of just kindness of heart. The National Endowment for the Arts does have a little bit of money, but that was really cut, and certain grants don't exist that we usually get. So here's I wanted to still give them credit for all of that as we navigate all of this. We still send our love to Utah Humanities, to the Utah Division of Arts Museums, to the Zoo Arts and Parks of Salt Lake County, also known as ZAP. And we also thank the Salt Lake City Arts Council. We thank Creative West. So all of these are wonderful, and all of them in some way or another has been affected by these cuts to the arts. And so this is something that you can come whether or not you donate. Though if you do, it makes a big difference because every nonprofit, not just us, are trying to scramble and figure some things out right now. So that's just at storycrossroads.org/donate, or there'll be some QR codes. Whether you're streaming, you can see it, or there's also there is here as well. And that being said, there's this wonderful person who is, oh gee whiz, someone's mother-in-law. Let's see, wasn't that what someone said? We need to bring on the mother-in-law, the wonder and scare of stories, Laurie Allen.
And without further ado, Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird. If that mockingbird don't sing, Mama's gonna buy you a diamond ring. In the days of the Old West, there were lots of towns that sprang up right along where the wagon trains went through. People found that they needed supplies, and some good trades could be made. Most everything was done in bartering. And people found out that maybe they didn't need Grandma's old bureau as much as they needed flour or sugar or other supplies. Hank ran one of these trading posts, and though he liked to make a good deal, Hank was also very honest. This one night, right at closing, a woman came into his shop, and he was quickly able to tell that she was unable to speak. And so he began to take things off of the shelves to see what it was that she wanted. No, she didn't need seeds, she didn't need flour, she didn't need sugar. He finally took from a top shelf a small tin of milk. Yes, that's what she wanted. He pushed it across the counter, trying to figure out how he would explain the bartering system to her, when she grabbed that tin of milk and left, leaving behind a garnet ring. This bothered Hank. That milk was not worth as much as that garnet ring. He picked up the ring and he went outside, but he couldn't see her anywhere. So he went back inside, he put it in a drawer, and he closed up his shop for the night. The next night, that same woman, with the haunted look upon her face, came into his shop just at closing. And she began gesturing toward the milk. He got out the garnet ring. He pushed it across the counter. No, she didn't care about that. She wanted the milk. He got the milk. He pushed both items across the counter. She grabbed the milk and ran out, leaving behind a pearl necklace. This bothered Hank again, and he picked up the jewelry. He went outside. He walked up and down the street, but he couldn't see her anywhere. Well, he went back inside. He knew what to do. He put it in the drawer. He closed up for the night. The third night, this same woman came into the store. She was frantic. She was gesturing toward the milk. He put all of the jewelry on the counter. He pushed it toward her. No, she wanted the milk. He grabbed the milk down. He pushed all the items. She grabbed the milk and left, leaving behind some pearl earrings. Hank picked up the jewelry. He went outside. He walked up and down the street. He asked anyone that he could see if they knew that woman, if they'd seen her. But nobody had. Finally, as he got just to the edge of town, a stranger walked up. Now, he was a wagon master, and he had a wagon train parked outside of town, and he was in town to see what his people could barter for the next day. And yes, he knew a woman that matched that description. 3 days ago, a cholera epidemic had swept through their camp. He'd buried a woman with a young child, matching that description, and she was wearing pearl earrings, a pearl necklace, and a garnet ring. No, Hank said, I didn't steal these. I can prove it. Well, how? We can go out. We can dig up that grave. You'll see I didn't take these things. Well, the wagon master agreed, provided Hank could find some tools and some fresh horses, which he did. They rode out with some hard riding. They got to the newly dug grave just as the sun was coming up over the mountains. They dug down, they pulled up the coffin, and they pried open the lid. Inside was the same woman who had been in Hank's store the past 3 nights. She was wearing no jewelry. There was a young child beside her, and the child was still alive. And if that horse and cart fall down, you'll still be the sweetest little baby in town. Thank you. And that's a Western legend called The Lady in White. And this is The Monkey's Paw by W.W. Jacobs. The small house was in the middle of a storm. The rain was coming down, the wind was blowing at the windows. But the family inside, Mr. and Mrs. White and their son Herbert, were sitting in front of a fire, and they were nice and cozy. The father and son were playing chess. The father was losing. He was getting a little bit irritated, and he finally said, "Oh, this weather, I'm sure he can never come, not on those roads." "Don't worry," his wife said. "Maybe you'll win next time." He looked a little bit ashamed. But then there was a knock on the door, and they went to open for their guest that they were expecting, Sergeant Major Morris. They had him come in, take off his wet jacket, sit by the fire, and offer him something to drink. Mr. White and Sergeant Major Morris had been friends years before, but the sergeant had gone into the army, and he had been serving in India and various other places for 20 years, and they hadn't seen each other till just a few days before, and Mr. White had invited him to come and tell him some of the stories of all of his exotic travels. And so, after he'd had a drink or two, loosened up his tongue a bit, he started telling them all about his campaigns, his adventures, the fakirs and the magic, and all of the things that he had seen. And Mr. White said, You told me something about a monkey's paw?" Sergeant looked a little uncomfortable. "Oh, it was just a bit of magic." "We want to hear." All three of them leaned in to hear the story. Well, Sergeant pulled out of his pocket a paw that mummified, a monkey's paw. And he said this was something that a fakir put a spell on it, so that 3 different people could have 3 wishes apiece from this paw. He wanted to show that fate ruled in people's lives, and if they messed with that, it was to their detriment. He said, it's really not, and I took it and he threw it toward the fire. And Mr. White got up and he picked it up and he said, "Have you had your 3 wishes?" He said, yes, I've had mine." "Well, then you can't use it anymore. You might as well let me have it." He said, "Oh, it's an evil thing. You don't want that. Best just destroy it." And Mr. White said, "No, this interests me." He put it in his pocket. Well, they had dinner, and things were kind of forgotten for a while. After dinner, the sergeant told them many more stories about all of his adventures. And finally, he had to leave. He had to leave to catch the last train going out so he could get back home. And when he did, they bid him farewell. And Mrs. White turned to her husband. She said, "Did you give him something for that?" He said, "Oh, a trifle." She said, "Well, let's see it. And Herbert the son said, "How does it work, Father? How does that work?" Well, he pulled it up out of his pocket, and he said, "Well, he told me I needed to put it in my right hand and raise it above my head and very clearly say what I wished for." And Herbert said, "Well, why don't you do it?" And Mr. White said, I don't really know that there's anything I need to wish for. I have everything that I want." Herbert said, "Well, how about 200 pounds to pay off the mortgage on this place? That would be good, wouldn't it?" So Mr. White took it and he put it in his right hand and he raised it up and very clearly said, "I wish for 200 pounds. He dropped it on the floor. He said, "It wiggled in my hands. It wiggled like a snake in my hands." "Oh dear, you just imagined that." "No, it wiggled in my hands." Well, Herbert said, "I can't see what harm it would cause you, 200 pounds. Well, unless it comes in a big bag and hits you on the head. It's okay. It's okay." Mr. White wasn't too sure. Well, it came time, and Herbert had to go to work the next day, and he and his mother went up to bed. And Mr. White sat there, staring into the fire. And absent-mindedly, he picked up that paw, and he looked into the fire, and there was, in the flames, an image that looked almost monkey-like. He put it on the mantle, and he went up to bed. Well, the next morning dawned bright and clear. It was a clear, beautiful winter day, and things like the superstitions of the night before were somewhat forgotten. They had breakfast, and Herbert was joking as he always did, and then he went off to work. He worked at a factory called Morgan and Ma's, and he went off to work, and the older couple did what they needed to around the house, a little bit of cleaning, just the kind of things you normally would be doing. And they kind of wondered about the money. In fact, Mrs. White, when she brought in a bill from the postman, said, well, that's how the monkey's paw's helping us, giving us another bill. They got together for lunch, and they were sitting there, and as she was looking out the window, she said, there's a man out there. He's pretty well dressed. He's got a nice new silk hat. I wonder, thinking about the money. But she said he's acting like he wants to come up the gate and up to the house, but he's walked by several times like he can't make up his mind. And then all at once he gingerly opened up the gate and walked up the path. Mrs. White quickly took her apron off and went and answered the door. And the man walked in, and he looked ill at ease, like he didn't know what to say. And Mrs. White tried to introduce herself, say something about the house or whatever. And finally, he said, I've come from Morgan and Ma's. Oh, is something wrong with Herbert? Is he hurt? Is he hurt? Yes, he's hurt badly, but he's not in any pain. Oh, good. Oh. She realized what that meant. And a moment later, so did her husband. Understand, I'm just the messenger. The company doesn't admit any fault in what happened. He was caught in the machinery. But they would like to offer you a little something as a condolence. Mr. White looked. He said, how much? 200 pounds. And he fell into a heap on the floor. A week later, they came back the 2 miles from the new cemetery. It's hard to bury your only child. They came in, and there was nothing to say. There was nothing. The house was just quiet. At first, they kept thinking that something else was going to happen, that it really wasn't true. But nothing else had. And so they finally settled into hopelessness. Sometimes people think of that as apathy, but it's just the hopelessness of the older people knowing that there's nothing they can do. Days stretched out, and nights stretched out longer. They settled into a routine, and one night, a fairly cold night, Mr. White rolled over in bed and realized his wife was not there with him. And he looked up, and when his eyes adjusted to the dark, he saw that she was sitting at the window, sobbing. And he said, come to bed. It's cold. She said, my son is colder. And she sat at the window crying. He finally rolled over in bed, trying to go back to sleep. And then, all at once, he was awakened. And his wife said, the paw, you have the paw. You didn't destroy it, did you? He said, what? The monkey's paw. There are 3 wishes. We've only had one. Wish my son alive again. Her husband was horrified. He said, I didn't tell you this, but the only way I could recognize him was by his clothing. He's been dead 10 days. He's got to look worse. This is an evil thing. She said, do you think I am afraid of the son I nursed? Wish him alive again. Get the paw. Mr. White went downstairs. He got the paw. He put it in his right hand. He raised it. And he made the awful wish and dropped it on the floor. He went back upstairs. His wife was watching at the window. They waited, and they waited. And Mr. White thought, nothing's happening. Maybe this is okay. Maybe this horrible thing is not going to happen. The dark in the room was oppressive, and he finally went downstairs to get some matches to light another candle. And when he got to the bottom of the stairs, he heard a knock, knock at the door. He dropped the matches. He hurried back upstairs. He didn't want to be down there when whatever it was out there came in the door. And then the knock was louder. And Mrs. White said, "There's a knock at the door. That's knocking at the door." He said, "Oh, no, that was just a mouse that knocked something and passed him on the stairs." "No, it's Herbert. It's our son. Let him in. We've got to let him in the house." He said, No, that's not what it is." He tried to grab his wife and not let her go down the stairs, but she fought against it and she ran down the stairs. She said, "It's Herbert. It's Herbert." The knocking by this time was louder, knocking on the door. And he went downstairs, and she was trying to get the bolt on the door. It was too high for her. She said, come, throw this bolt across the door. We've got to let him in." And Mr. White, by that time, was crawling around in the dark, trying to find the monkey's paw. And just about the time, with the knocking reverberating through the house, he could hear the chair go and the bolt begin to be thrown when he found the paw and made the third wish. The knocking stopped. The echoing was still there. And he heard his wife cry in anguish, which gave him the courage to go to the door and look out on the deserted street. Now, there were 3 people that were supposed to have 3 wishes. To my knowledge, only 2 have. So if you are ever in an import store that has things from foreign places and exotic lands, and you find a shriveled up monkey's paw, will you pick it up? Children! What am I going to do? I have 13 children. The man sat in front of his house with his head in his hands and was just beyond. He could not figure out what to do. Now, this should have been a happy occasion. His wife had just given birth to a healthy baby boy. But 13 children. He was a poor man. He could hardly keep the 12 he already had in clothes and food, and now he had a 13th child. He sat there and cried and carried on, and then realized he had to do something. Something had to be done. And so he figured the first thing to do was to find a godfather for this new son. Someone who could kind of help with things, as things were going to be tight and there were going to be problems. And so he walked down the street early in the morning, looking for a godfather for his new son. The first person that he met was a fairly rich lady. She had jewels, she had a very fancy dress on, and she was walking down the street and noticed him and how sad he looked, and she said, "Oh, my young man, why are you so sad? Can I help you?" And he took one look. He said, "No, you cannot help me. I need a godfather for my new son." "Oh, I could be a godmother. I could do that." "No, because the rich don't care about the poor. You cannot be the godparent for my son." Well, she huffed off. She was pretty insulted with that. And he kept walking down the street. The next person he met was a man. He knew this man. He was very shabbily dressed. he was probably more poor than the father was. And he said, "Oh, you look like you've had a really bad day. Can I do anything?" "No, I wish you could, but my wife's just had a son." "Well, congratulations." "Oh, yes, 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 but I really need a godfather, and you're struggling. I thank you for your care, but no." And he walked on. Well, the next person he met was the mayor of the town. And the mayor of the town said, "Oh, you look like you could use some help. What can I do to help you?" Well, the mayor was not known to really care about the people. And he looked at him and he said, "I'm looking for a godfather for my son, but no, not you." And he walked off. Well, by this time, he is just to the end of town, and he has not found anybody suitable to be a godfather for this child, and he needed someone. He needed help. So a stranger was walking into town. Now, this stranger was fairly nicely dressed, but not rich. And he looked like, well, maybe he'd be able to help. And so he went up to him and he said, "I am looking for a godfather for my new son." And the man kind of smiled and he said, "That's an interesting thought, but I could do that. You see, I am deaf, and I could be the godfather, at least until his time comes." And the man said, "Yes, you could do that. Death hits the rich and the poor. It's very equal. Doesn't care which you are. You can be the godfather for my son." And he told him the time to come for the ceremony, and Death came, and he was the godfather for this 13th son. Well, the boy grew, and as he did, Death came pretty regularly and taught him things. He said, "I am going to help you. You are going to be a famous physician. You are going to be wealthy." And he taught him about herbs and plants, and he took him into the forest where there was a special herb, and he showed him how to make it into a liquid, and he said, "You keep a little vial of this always with you. And if you go into a sick room, you'll be able to heal somebody. But this is what you have to do. When you come into the room, nobody will be able to see me, but you will be able to see me. And if I am standing at the foot of the bed, you will know that that person can be healed, and you will give them some of that vial, and they will be healed. But if I'm standing at the head of the bed, they are appointed unto death, and you must give comfort, but make no promises, because they will not be healed." The young man agreed. He got a bag, he put the vial in, he put other things in it that he might need to help people, and he became a famous physician. He went far and wide because people heard about him. They heard that when he went in a room, he could instantly tell whether someone was appointed unto death or whether they could be saved. And he became so famous that one day the king of the land was ill. And he got worse and he got worse. And all of his physicians could do nothing. But they had heard about this famous physician, and they called him into the palace. Now the young man thought, "This is my chance. If I can heal the king, I can go anywhere." And so he was very anxious, and he went up there and he went into the room. His godfather was standing at the head of the bed. Well, he had to make a quick decision, and he decided, my godfather, he won't begrudge me this opportunity. He'll be okay with this. And he said, "Quick, he needs more air. Open the window and turn the bed around." And now Death was standing at the foot of the bed. He gave him some of the medicine, and the king recovered. Well, the king was so happy, he told the physician he could have his daughter in marriage. had seen that daughter, and he knew that she was kind, and he knew that she was beautiful. And she had seen him, and she was pretty happy with that. Godfather of Death was not happy. He took his godson aside, out of the room, and he said, "You have cheated me once. Do not cheat me again." And the couple got married, and they were so happy, and everything was going well. He was still able to go out and help people and heal people. And then his wife became ill. And she was very ill. The color went out of her cheeks. She couldn't eat. It was just a serious, serious illness. And of course, he went into the room. His godfather was standing at the head of the bed. He loved her so much. He couldn't do that. He had to do something. He knew he had to. And so he quickly said, "Turn the bed around." Godfather's at the foot of the bed. He gave her the medicine. The roses came back into her cheeks. And she was able to eat something she hadn't in days. Death took his godson aside and walked him out of the room, holding on to his arm. Death can have a pretty strong grip, and there was no arguing with him. And he walked him out of the palace, and he walked him into the woods, deeper in the woods than he had ever been, still holding on to him. And they got to a cave, and he walked him into the cave. And in that cave, there were thousands and thousands of candles, all burning. And some were tall and bright, and some were small, and they were guttering out, drowning in their wax. Some were sputtering out, and some were being lit anew. And the man looked around, and he said, What is this? This is the lives of the people. You see, some of these are tall, they're very young, they've got long lives yet. And you see some that are small, that are getting ready to die. And some that are in the middle, and sometimes even the young will die early, but these are the lives of the people. Look around, see all of these candles. And he did, and the smell of the wax burning, and he watched all those candles. And then he dared ask a question. He said, which candle is mine? And he said, that one right there. You see that one that's wallowing in its own wax? It's about ready to sputter out. That one is yours. No, I can't die now. I have this beautiful wife. We're so happy. I can't die. What about that big candle right there, right next to it? Could I be that candle? And Death gave a little smile, and he said, that candle is your unborn son. I'm going to have a son? Oh, I'm going to have a son? Yes. And that's his candle. So, because you are my godson, I will give you a choice. Put out his candle or put out yours. And the man looked, this horrible choice, and he looked and with shaky hands he reached out and snuffed out his own candle. And that's Godfather Death. It's a Grimm's story, not one that Disney has done. Okay. When the storm began to pour up on the top of the car, we knew we were in trouble. Well, my daughter Barbara and I like to take trips together. And back when, before she got married, been years ago, and it was just the two of us at home, and we looked at our calendars one summer, and there was 1 week that we both had off work, that we could go on a trip. And so, in a spur of a moment, serendipitous, we planned a trip to the Oregon coast. And the main attraction was going to be Crater Lake. We knew it would be covered with snow, but we'd be able to see it. And on the way, of course, Oregon, you drive along the coast, all the beautiful trees, and we were having a wonderful time. Well, it got to the point where we needed to go inland. And sometimes there's not a lot of good roads. The north-south roads are good, but inward, yeah, kind of hard. And so we looked at the map. This was before GPS, folks. We looked at that map, and the straightest line between where we were and where we needed to be was a Forest Service road. Now there should be scary music here. Early in June, a Forest Service road. Yes, maybe not the best choice, but that's where we headed. And we started out. Now, it didn't look that far. Even with the scale map, it didn't look that far. We went through, we thought, a town called Agnes. Don't go to Agnes, Oregon. It's a joke town. It's a stop for the post. That's all it is. So we got there, and we had to keep going. I mean, that was a joke town. We had to keep going. We started going up over the mountain. I couldn't tell. I had a fairly new to me vehicle, and I didn't know if the gas gauge, how good it was. We might be able to run out of gas. We're in the middle of nowhere, Oregon. And we go up over the mountain. We get up the mountain, and a baby bear runs right in front of our car. And I had visions of Mama Bear running after it and eating my car. I have a small car. And Barbara told me that, black bears, that's just how big they are. I didn't really believe her, but I needed to because I had to keep driving. And we went over the mountain, and the road did not get better. And we're on this Forest Service road. We finally get down the mountain. We needed to get to a town. We needed to get someplace because I didn't know if we had enough gas. And as we're driving, we got into the deeper forest area. And that's when the rain started. And poured, and the puddles got deeper, and the car was having problems getting through them, and we're trying to drive through the mud. And I said, we've got to find a place. Thunder and lightning, we've got to find a place for the night. We've got to find some place. So I'm driving, and she's looking out, and she sees some lights a little bit out in the forest. And so we drove on that road. It was even worse than the Forest Service road, but we drove on it, and we got there. And then we hoped and prayed that whoever was in that house was kind. And we went up to the front stoop and knocked on the door. An older woman came to the door. She did not look overly pleased to see us. And we didn't look really good with the rain and the car covered with mud. But when she found out our problem, she let us in. And she said, I can give you a place to sleep, but no breakfast. I have to leave really early in the morning. Okay, fine. Just a roof. We needed a roof at that point. And so she walked us in. The house smelled almost unused. It had kind of a different smell, like maybe nobody had lived in it for a while. We didn't know if it was a summer place or what it was. And we walked up some really rickety stairs and got up to this room, which had a double bed, which was big enough. That's all we needed. And it was actually clean, and the bed was clean. And so she left us in there, and she went off, and we took off our wet things and went to bed, listening to the rain pounding on the roof. But we did get some sleep. And when we woke up in the morning, just as the sun was coming up, woke up really early, the rain had stopped, the sun was shining, and the house was deathly quiet. Obviously, the woman did have someplace to go first thing in the morning. Well, we got up, we got dressed and whatever, and on the way out, I thought we really should give her something for having given us shelter. And so I found an envelope in my purse and put some cash in it and wrote thanks on the back and put it on the table right next to the door as we left. And blissfully, the car started, everything was fine, we had enough gas, because it wasn't very far to the next actual town, small but actual town. We were able to buy gas, and we went in to a little cafe because we were pretty hungry. And they came and they took our order, the waitress, and she looked out at our car, which was pretty much a mess. She said, "Where have you been?" And we explained that we'd gone over the mountain and we had stayed overnight in this house. And she kind of shook her head and she went off and got our order. When she brought it back, she said, "You have just described the Williams place. You could not have stayed at the Williams place last night." And then she told us the story. Mr. and Mrs. Williams had lived in this little house in the forest with their son. They didn't talk to people too much. They were kind of by themselves, but they were happy in their little house together. And then the son got called into the army. And it wasn't too long before they got news that he'd been killed. Mrs. Williams lost it, totally. They were both just totally bereft, but she cried and she cried and she just went basically out of her head. She couldn't handle it. She couldn't handle being in this house where she'd raised this baby to an adult. It just reminded her too much. She couldn't handle it. And so one day they just packed up and they just left the house. The house had been empty since then. But there were teenagers in the neighborhood. And you know, teenagers, they started daring each other to go to that house, especially at night. Because sometimes there were supposedly lights in the windows and different things like that. And so they started daring each other. And it was especially a good dare on Halloween night. Go to the old Williams place, see if you could get clear up to the porch, knock on the door, see how brave you were. And a group of boys went one Halloween night. And something scared them, something spooked them, and they ran away. But one of the boys had a torch with him, and he dropped it on the way, and the house lit on fire. Neighbors saw the smoke. They were able to get the fire out, but she said, "That house is barely standing. The front wall is still there, the door sort of connected, but that house, you could not have spent the night last night in that house." Well, you know, we thanked her, we paid. I gave her an extra tip for the story. We weren't sure we believed it, but it bothered us. It wasn't that far to go back to where we knew we had spent the night before. And so we doubled around, we drove back, we got down the road. We could tell which road it was. It had our car, you know, ruts in it. We got down there, we got out of the car, we went to the stoop. The front part of the house was almost intact. The door was hanging at a crazy angle. That's not what it looked like an hour ago. And then we got a real shock. Barbara peeked around that door, and there, on the remains of what probably was a table, there was a white envelope with thanks written across it. You recognized part of that story, didn't you? Yeah. There's nothing that happens in your life that you can't make better. I mean, let's figure it out, you know. I mean, you can always make the story better. This is a story called Believe, and it was given to me by a wonderful storyteller who created her own stories, and Catherine Lyman, and she passed it on to me before she passed away. How would you like to run a charity haunted house this year? That's what one of my friends asked me one August. That was not my dream job. But I was between jobs right then. And I had a job down in Phoenix that started the 4th of November. So this was the perfect slot to put something else in. Well, I agreed. And the first thing I had to do, of course, was hire people that knew more what they were doing than what I did. But I needed costumers, I needed makeup artists, I needed people who could do advertising, I needed people that could do the tricks and the different things, and actors, lots of people to hire. And that was when I met Tobin. Tobin had long dark hair and luminescent brown eyes. And I could tell that she was hard up on her luck. She was dressed pretty shabby, and I could just tell she needed this job. And I also found out she was very artistic. She could do beautiful calligraphy, she could make signs, she could do the final touches on anything that we did and make it look better. And so I immediately hired her. After I did, I realized she had no place to stay, which was perfect because in the back of this building that we were using, there was a small apartment. And she could stay there, and she'd be kind of a night-day watchman. That way nobody could get in and mess with our stuff that we were getting together and all the tricks we were putting together. And I also went to my closet. I needed to clean out anyway, and I was moving, and found her some clothes. And took her a box of clothes, set her up in that apartment, and she was grateful. And she was a good worker. She did anything I asked her to do, and more. And one night, it was getting close to opening time. And I was there after everyone else had left, except Tobin in the back room, trying to make sure that one of the tricks and effects was working just correctly. And I heard a sound back there. And I walked to the back, and I looked in. And Tobin is sitting in a rocking chair, cradling a baby. I didn't know she had a child. And she's cradling this baby, and she's crying and crying and crying. And while I watched, the baby disappeared. And all she had was a blanket of bones. I felt like I had seen something maybe I wasn't supposed to see. And so I just quietly went out. But I couldn't sleep that night. I was worried about her. And so I got there really early the next day, before anyone else was at work. And I asked her about what I'd seen. And that was when I heard Tobin's story. She and her husband had longed for a child. They had tried everything. They had spent money on doctors and treatments and all kinds of things until they had spent just about everything they had, and nothing was working, and they so wanted a child. They had set up a room already. They were just waiting to have this child. And one day, the husband told Tobin that he was going to a witch woman who said she could make things happen. Tobin begged him not to go. Don't take the last of our money. Don't take it to someone like that. Don't do it. But he insisted. And he went to the witch woman. And he came back with a blanket of bones and some very careful instructions. They were to take that blanket of bones and put it into a room on a bed, close the blinds, close the doors, leave it alone for 7 days. Don't peek, don't look, leave it for 7 days. At the end of 7 days, you'll have a baby. So they did. They put it in this room, closed the blinds, closed the door, and left it. Well, mostly left it. The husband could not handle it. He paced up and down the hall. He wondered what was going on in there. He couldn't stand it. One time Tobin caught him reaching for the doorknob. No! You were told not to disturb it. But he couldn't handle it. And one night, while Tobin wasn't looking, he opened that door just a crack. And there on the bed lay a baby. And the minute that light hit, turned back into a pile of bones. He closed the door. Nobody need know. Nobody need know. The end of the 7 days came. They opened up the door, and there was a blanket full of bones. Tobin cried and cried. She said, I told you not to go to that witch woman. I told you that wasn't the thing to do. And he said things to her, and she said things to him, and he finally admitted what he had done. And then things were said between the two of them that should not be said between a husband and wife. And finally, he gave Tobin the blanket of bones and send her out of the house. Since then, she had been going around from place to place, getting whatever job she could. But first of all, she knew she had to get enough courage. She had to get enough courage to go back to the witch woman. And she did. She went back to her. And she told her what had happened. And she said, I gave him strict instructions and he did not follow them. That wasn't me. That wasn't me. Surely something can be done. Surely something. It was all of our money. I'll give you one chance. After you have spent 10 times the gold and 100 times the tears, you can have that baby. And until then, for 1 hour each night, there will be a baby that will then disappear. She gave Tobin a container to put the money in, and Tobin had been working and working and working. And every time she'd fill that jar with money, it would disappear. Where was it going? Would it ever be enough? Well, I heard that story and my heart broke for her. And I said, look, we've got people coming to a charity event. They are coming with extra money, and the lines are usually really long. Why don't you write up the story just like you told it to me, and we'll put a jar there with a sign that says believe. And they can read that story, and if they believe, they can put money in there. And maybe that will help with all this money. And so we did, wrote it up, put it there with the jar, believe. And every day, every night, it was a busy time of year, people put money in there, which then disappeared by the next morning. And every night, Tobin sat there for 1 hour with that baby. Would it ever be enough? Well, Halloween came, Halloween went, and I had to get moving down to Phoenix. And so I got everything taken care of that I could, and I left Tobin in charge to get the last paychecks done and the last cleanup done. She was such a good worker. I knew I could trust her. And I went down to Phoenix. And a couple of weeks later, I got a box. And it was from Tobin, and I opened it up, all the clothes I'd lent her. She did not need to return them, but in the top of the box, there was a little square that I picked up, and it was a picture. It was a picture of Tobin holding the hand of a little girl with the same luminescent brown eyes and the same brown hair as Tobin. And 3 words on the bottom. It was enough. All right, you have listened really well to all of my crazy stories. So now I'm going to tell you a crazy, true story. My great-grandmother Eliza lived across the road from the cemetery in Provo. Now it's a big highway, but at the time it was a road, and her father had been sexton of the cemetery, which was why that's where they had built the house. He could walk to work, and it was great. Now, she had a rough life. Her husband died after they'd been married only 3 years. She had had my grandfather, and she was pregnant with her second child when he died. She moved back home. They were down in Junction, Utah. Extra points if you know where that is. You can tell me afterwards. But she'd moved back to the family home in Provo and had her second child, who died as a young man. And she lived with her sister, Pearl. Now, Pearl was never married, and she was a school teacher. And Eliza had had a leg amputated, so she had a wooden leg and sometimes was in a wheelchair. So this worked out well. Pearl could go out and teach and earn the money, and Eliza could be home and do the stuff around the house that she could do, fix the meals, whatever. And they lived together for years and years in a house that had been lived in for many more. So, when you get people in a home for that long, and there have been births, there have been deaths, and there is stuff everywhere. Well, the 2 older people died, as happens. And Provo, as happens, wanted the house torn down to make room for improvements. So, it became my grandfather's, the only surviving son, and his 4 surviving daughters to clean out this house from years and years and years of memories. There was a lot of paper, there were a lot of letters and things, and some of them they were going to save and some of them they weren't going to save, and just all kinds of receipts, all kinds of things that had never been thrown away. Because it was still somewhat of a country area, they built a small fire out front and kept that going so that when they put it into piles, we're saving this, we're getting rid of this, they could just burn it up and take care of it. And so my mom and her 3 sisters were taking turns helping my grandfather to go through this house. And it was a big job. Well, this one particular day, my Aunt Jane was the one that was there. And she was sitting in the second best parlor, going through letters and various things. My grandfather, well, there was a neighbor that had horses, and a horse had escaped. So he was outside trying to help corral this horse. And so she's sitting inside, only one in the house. Well, except for the memories that started crowding in and crowding in and crowding in on her. She could almost feel the people that had lived there and the joys and the sorrows and the thousands and thousands and thousands of meals that had been made in the nearby kitchen. And as she's feeling all those memories, she starts to hear the sounds of the wooden leg on the floor and the cupboards opening and the water running and the smells of dinner being made. And then she realized it wasn't in her memories. She was hearing those sounds. She sort of froze on the couch where she was sitting. She didn't dare go in the kitchen to see what was going on in there. She knew she was the only living person in the house. So she picked up a nearby telephone. She called my mom, her sister, who lived in a nearby town, and said, "I need to talk to somebody living because Grandma is making dinner in the kitchen." Thank you. You have been an amazing audience. Those are kind of hard stories, I know, but aren't they fun?
All right, so here's the thing. We're gonna make some announcements, but those who are here in person, you will get an extra story. It happens to be a story that she has permission to tell, but not to record. So I'm sorry, we love you, those who are streaming, but I will have to end it before she does this last piece. So that is, honoring, whenever we can, we want to honor. We also want to remind you that not only is Laurie Allen amazing, which I think we should do a round of applause for her before we... Yes. I mean, not only is she amazing, but there's a lot of amazing storytellers. And the next house concert is going to be in Sandy, and that's not too far from here in the Salt Lake County area. And we will be featuring Dan and Annie Eastman. Dan is actually here. You can kind of wave, say hi. You're invited to go home. As well as Scotty Larson. And so it is going to be a cowboy story, poetry, and music. So it's going to be quite the combination of arts. And that's going to be on a Friday, November 21st. And you can come in person or stream. And then, if you know people in Logan or don't mind going to Logan, in December, on Wednesday, December 3rd, will be the next house concert, and that will feature Ted Erickson. And he will do many stories, many family stories, but he will also throw in a Christmas story because he's kind of known to play Joseph sometimes, as in Mary and Joseph, just in case. And it's going to be a lot of fun. So whether you can come in person or whether you stream, we always encourage you to come. You just make sure to grab a bookmark or check out our website, storycrossroads.org, and you will have what you need and come join us for that. So with that, we're going to just kind of have a quick moment. Just stay right there. And I'm sorry, streamers, I'm going to have to end the recording. but you're loved. And remember, you can donate to storycrossroads.org/donate. And if you're streaming, that QR code will also, if you scan it, will get you there too. So,
Rachel, can you
yes.
let them know if they want to hear more of Laurie's telling? They can do it on a ghost tour.
Oh.
I do have some ghost stories.
Yes, in fact, yes, if you're here in person, you're required to take this paper. And if you've already been on these tours, you're required to share it with someone else. Does that work?
That'll work.
So,
Storytours.com.
storytours.com. So streamers, it is really, really fun. Hey, if you don't live in Utah, just come and it'll be fun. And you can even schedule it outside of the October time, by the way, as long as you have a group to go. Yeah, see? Ooh, what did it? Ooh, yeah. Yeah. And what's wonderful is that there's the Ogden one and there's the Salt Lake one. And there's several types of tours. There's many story guides. And so you really can go on it several times. So yes, you will want to do that. And she's done that. How many years have you done that now?
Over 20.
Over 20 years. So she kind of knows ghosts.
Longer than
She kind of knows a lot of things. Okay, now for real, I'm gonna do that. Okay, and you guys just hold your horses. Ghost horses and living.
So this story, I can start this much before you get turned off, is by Drini Hadding, and she is an author that wrote a book called Tales from Huntsville, Eden, and Liberty. Tales from Hell. Anyway, that's hell. I am not making that up.
Nope.
And she had a writing group, but this is one of her stories, and she gave me permission to tell it, but I didn't get permission to record it. I didn't even think about